Hey everyone, if you want to make your own podcast but you don't know where to begin, Spotify for Podcasters makes it super easy. They've got everything in one place, it's totally free, and you can make money while doing it. Here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start doing it today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and pretty much everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also supported, and you can even conduct polls and Q&As. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, the platform is totally free. No catch, totally free. When I wanted to start my own podcast, I did not know where to begin, and I didn't think it was even possible. And Spotify for Podcasters made it happen. They made it easy, they made it quick, and I am doing something that I love. What more can I ask for? So if you're interested in starting your own show, you can do it, and I highly recommend you give this a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Everything Kratom, the podcast about anything and everything Kratom. Great to have you with us on this Monday morning. Hope everybody's week is going off to a great start. Great to have you here. It is episode 37, everybody. Can you believe it? Been doing this for a couple months now. Excluding a couple weeks ago, been able to do an episode every single weekday. And it's just been great. I've loved having everybody, participating by listening in and some comments that you've sent along. And just so happy to see this kind of thriving and moving forward. So thanks so much. Okay, so today I was thinking that I would talk a little bit about some of my favorite activities to do when I take Kratom. And thinking about this is pretty easy for me. There's a lot of things I like to do with Kratom, and there's a lot of things that I like to do without Kratom, but Kratom also just enhances when I'm doing them. So slight distinction there, but either way, I'm going to talk about some enjoyable things to do with Kratom. So first thing, let's see, reading. So I'm 28 years old, and I don't have a lot of friends my age who actually read anymore. I think I've mentioned this once before in a past episode. I'm not bashing anybody, so please don't think of me as like some person like saying, oh, you don't read books, yada yada. Like, no, I'm not that kind of person. It's just something that I've noticed. Younger people don't tend to read books as much from what I can tell. But I do. I really enjoy books. I hated reading up until, maybe college. I mean, up to college, I maybe read a few books on my own outside of school. Mainly because my dad made me, but I didn't really enjoy it. It wasn't fun for me. I'd much rather like play video games, watch TV, or sword fight with sticks out in the backyard with a friend. But yeah, no, I started getting into reading around college, and I think some of my homework was super interesting. And then outside of that, I started reading, just trying to get into it again. And by the end of college, I was actually pretty into reading. And the past few years, I've just been going through books left and right compared to what I used to do. I really enjoy novels. I also really enjoy historical nonfiction, looking at specific events or things in history. And so I've been doing that the past few years. So I've always had a novel that I'm reading, and then also like a historical, nonfiction thing. But I will say, even though I do enjoy reading, sometimes I really have trouble getting into it. Like, I know that I want to read. I do not want to look at my phone. I do not want to play a video game. I do not want to, do whatever else. Like, I want to read a book, but I'm just having trouble getting myself to sit down and do it, right? Kratom is super helpful for this, for me personally. I really enjoy, let's say it's, a weekend, early afternoon, 1 p.m., sitting out on the back porch if it's sunny and warmer out, or inside kind of cozy if it's cold or rainy. And oh goodness, like just having a cup of tea, opening up a book, about 10 minutes before, taking maybe 3 grams of a white vein. If you take like I like taking Indo white or a white Thai 10 minutes before cracking open a book, having a cup of tea. Wow. It just gets me in the mood. And like by the time 10 minutes is up and I've like planned, to start reading, I'm already like, without even thinking about it, I'm like, oh, I just want to read right now. So it works really well. It just gets me in this nice fuzzy mood, it gets me motivated, but I'm not like, I don't have to do work. I don't have homework. I get to read, like, oh boy, this is for me. So I can start making my way through a novel, and it's just so enjoyable. And it makes the activity that much more fun. Even though I already enjoy reading, it's like it makes it, there's no distractions. It's like, that's what I'm doing right now. And I get really into the story. I have less trouble focusing on it because, I'm sure a lot of people out there have the same problem where like they'll read a page and then they'll like realize I didn't take any of that in and I have to go back. It's actually a funny meme about that out there. But that happens to me quite often. But with Kratom, it doesn't happen to me like at all. So I love that. So reading would be my number one favorite thing to do with Kratom because it helps me do something that otherwise I might have some trouble doing. But I do enjoy it and I want to do it. So that's my number one. Another one, ironically, I just mentioned I'd rather do that instead of video games. But number 2, video games. Oh yeah, you know it. I'd say the same thing. Or instead of, a white vein, instead of like Indo white or white Thai, maybe a green Thai. Now that I've had that and I've been getting into that recently, green Thai, or even like red Thai, or let's see, what's another red that I enjoy? Red Borneo, something like that. Taking less, maybe like 2 grams. And then again, waiting for a few minutes and then opening up a book. That's great, but video games, whole nother level. It's like taking that and then a few minutes later, or just start a video game right away because it'll kick in while you're doing it. I get so into the game. It makes it even more enjoyable, even though it's already enjoyable. I'm into a lot of different games, although I don't have any like game system, but I'm looking into getting one sometime soon. But I grew up with I grew up with a PS1 and then a PS2. My brother got a PS2 soon after they came out, I think. And we had a lot of different games on that, first person shooter, flying games, like flight simulator things, hockey games, wrestling games, you name it, we've tried it. But I really, really, really love Kratom and video gaming. I'd have to say, I'm not a huge Call of Duty person, but even like Call of Duty mobile on your phone, having a little bit of Kratom before that, and then going into VR mode, it's so fun. Battle Royale, do it to it. I end up finding myself going through like 3 hours, in 10 Battle Royale games. And before I know it, it's like, dinner time. I can't do that as much anymore with the baby, but once in a while you can sneak it in there. So I highly recommend video games also on Kratom. Helps me focus on the game, helps me enjoy it. And, put some headphones in and you're lost, you're in a new world. So I really, really, really enjoy that. My number 3, and maybe these aren't chronologically, maybe these aren't in order, of what I enjoy most to least, because I really do enjoy all these activities while using Kratom a great deal. So maybe I'll get rid of this whole priority system. The next thing that I'll mention is walking my dogs and just walks in general. I will wake up in the morning, take some sort of green or white variety of Kratom, and then, head out the door, go walk the dogs. Sometimes when there are too many ticks in the woods near my house, I'll drive, with my dogs, just, down the road a couple minutes to this different place, or a cemetery or somewhere where you can let them off the leash and there's nobody really around. And there aren't actually any ticks out there in this area. So I'll take them there and just taking a walk and looking at mountains and trees and different colors in the fall. Kratom actually helps me not only just, it enhances the whole experience, but it also really helps me enjoy and appreciate the exercise. And I think that it gives me a bit more stamina. I'm not sure how much. I'm sure that it's not too much. But I'm not a super fit person, like I'm skinny, but I'm not muscular that much. But it helps me go up hills more easily, and especially a Mang Da. Oh, taking a white Mang Da and going on a walk. Yes, that is so fun. I feel like I walk faster and maybe further. It doesn't affect the dog's walk at all. They're running after squirrels, doing whatever they'll do. But for me, it's just really enjoyable. And I find that I can go a bit further than if I didn't take Kratom. So that's another thing that I love. Along the lines of motivation, and this kind of goes along with reading, but not quite. Reading as an enjoyable thing, that was the first thing I mentioned. But also, it occurs to me another thing that I like to do after I take Kratom, and I sometimes find myself doing this without, consciously like setting the goal of doing this. I will be in this mindset after I take Kratom where I get very motivated, and I want to, like, a question will pop up in my head, or something that I've been thinking about, like current events around the world will pop in my head, and I'll be like, well, why is that? Or I'll think, when did that start? Like looking at the news today, there's this military coup that just happened in Sudan. And it's making me wonder, why is this happening? What's the role of the military been so far? How are they related to, the prime minister that they took and kind of, took over the country from? What was their relation to them before? Have they always been at odds with the prime minister there, but just kind of dealt with it? I know that Sudan obviously is one of the most turbulent countries and turbulent areas around the world, let alone Africa. And just through my own research in the past, it always seems like whenever lines are drawn somewhere by some Western power, it ends up not working out so well, whether that be Eastern Europe or Africa or wherever it may be. But anyway, just kind of like wanting to dive in a bit more, because most news articles or breaking news stories, you don't really get much context unless you look it up. So like I'll find myself taking Kratom, thinking about something like that or seeing the news or whatever, and then going to look into it. Look at the Encyclopedia Britannica, look up Sudan in the Encyclopedia Britannica, click history, and then go, a few pages back from present day, like maybe go like 75 years back, 100 years back, kind of skim the first page, then go to the next one. Once you get around 50 years ago or something, then start really, really reading intently. And you just read a few pages and you end up getting like a much better context of what's going on. And so I guess this one I'm calling research, but just being able to research something, really follow it through. I'm not calling it reading because, reading's already helped through the taking of Kratom for me, but I really mean like following an idea, following my nose. I think that research is really fun when I'm on Kratom, and I find it's easier to do, and it's fascinating, and just, like making a note, make a very brief note somewhere, you can do it on your phone or you could write it down in a notebook, and you start really developing a great view of the world and a more well-rounded one. And then the next, I've found that from a few years of doing this now that, when something happens in a country, let's say, Ukraine or, Russia, and some sort of thing happens, a conflict between the two, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Or, oh yeah, I can see why that's happening because I, did this 3 years ago. So I kind of have the memory. I don't have to look it up again. So I find that it's helped me store the memory of this research as well. So I'd say try research out. Definitely works for me. Okay, one more thing that I'll mention for this one is another activity would be listening to music. Love listening to music on Kratom. You know what? Actually, let me revise that. Listening to music and like cleaning my house. It makes both those tasks so much more fun or enjoyable or manageable or tolerable, depending. I mean, music I always love listening to, so it just makes it, I can get more into the music. I'll listen to songs that maybe I didn't have the patience for before. Like if there's an album, like a full album that you want to listen to, or you just like one song on this album, but you've never heard the whole album, Kratom might help you actually listen to the whole album. Like it gives me more patience. It lets me appreciate something a lot more when it comes to listening to like a whole album. Because if you think about it, an artist puts together a whole album of music for a reason. And, maybe that's not as much true for a lot of artists today, although I know it is for a lot of others. But especially like listening to like, The Who, like Tommy. The album Tommy is great. And it's a story. Like you're meant to listen to the whole thing, and just listening to one song on that album doesn't necessarily give you the whole picture or get across what The Who is trying to get across to you. So you can, take this and translate that to whatever album you want or whatever type of music you listen to. And it could be present day or from the past. But I find that it really helps me like listen to a whole album or like a set of music that maybe I'm just not as patient when it comes to listening to it without Kratom. So give that a try. And then along those lines, like listening to that whole album or listening to music or just letting it go while cleaning the house, that is great on Kratom for me as well, because I feel like I'm entertained while I'm also doing this work that needs to be done. And it can make it fun, or, make it at least more tolerable for those who really don't like cleaning. So, helps you get your life together. So those are some activities that I really enjoy while using Kratom, and I hope that you give some of those a try. Maybe even the more healthier ones, as video gaming might not be as healthy, but still totally fun. So I thought I'd talk about some activities today. That's what I enjoy with Kratom. I'm sure I'll think of others as well. Maybe I'll do a part 2 later this week if I think of some more, because there's a lot of things that I do while using Kratom. Part of that is because I like to experiment doing different things while I'm Kratom, and also part of that is just if you use Kratom, once a week, twice a week, or somewhat often for years on end, you end up realizing, oh yeah, I've done that on Kratom versus not on Kratom, and it was different when I was on Kratom. So you start just developing that experience regardless of if you're trying to. So I hope that you find this interesting and try things out. And some other piece of advice that I'll throw out there is write it down. Like sometimes it's easy to forget what works and what doesn't. But if you just have a notebook or just somewhere where you can just very briefly just say like this much Kratom, this type of Kratom, this is what I did, yes or no, like positive or negative or neutral. I find that that's really helpful. I've started doing that the past few years, and it's helpful to look back and be like, obviously like you can find out for yourself, but it's nice to know like, oh, today I want to, research this topic, or today I really need to clean this room. Which type worked the best for me in the past? Being able to just reference that briefly is great. And maybe even taking Kratom is the motivation you need to start that list. So, there you go. Kratomception. Hope you all enjoyed this episode, and, hope your week is off to a great start. Keep on keeping on. And I will talk to you again tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody.